all have that person in our lives who seems to be connected to everyone.
You can be intentional about your network while still being human.
In order to build strong connections with others, you really have to be strongly connected with yourself.
I believe that meaningful networking has been the single greatest contributor to my good luck.
You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards.
Welcome to Who Got Me Here. I'm your host, Jamie Grenny. Today, I get to sit down with Rebecca Agostino, an amazing entrepreneur in the world of education. She served with Teach for America, worked on edtech platforms, and at the age of 25, was the founding principal of the Freedom Prep High School in Camden, New Jersey. Today, her focus is on teaching the next generation how to build a network and how to build durable skills that power career transitions. And not in this vague, go meet people kind of way, but in a very practical way. Who to reach out to, what to say, how to follow up, how to get over the fear, and how to turn a conversation into a real world experience. Rebecca, it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Jamie, thanks for having me. Really excited for our chat.
Before we get into your story, I thought it'd be fun to share how we got connected because I think it illustrates what networking done right looks like and feels like. We were introduced by Annie Riley, who has hosted a bunch of episodes on this podcast. How did you two link up?
Annie, the super connector. I got to meet Annie at a dinner. It was a networking event for a venture capital fund we've both done some work with. And it was one of those situations where I walked in and didn't know a single person and was feeling really awkward and nervous. And I think I was just sort of standing by myself. And Annie welcomed me on in to the conversation. And we chatted all night, had a ton in common about what keeps us up at night and what we really value. And it was just one of those magic connection moments that Annie creates all around her.
What a way to tee things up. I think we've all had that experience where we meet someone unexpected and it just clicks. And more often than not, that connection, that conversation leads to new opportunities. Rebecca, when did you first realize that networking is one of the most important skills that we don't actually teach?
Yeah. So I started my career in K-12, and then I decided that I wanted to move out of the K-12 space and better understand work-based learning and workforce development. So to make that transition to better understand the industry and private sector side of things, I went to business school. And again, my career journey had been pretty linear at that point. I had done Teach for America. I became a teacher in that same school network. I became a principal, and I got to business school and everyone was networking. All of my peers had been in business, they had been consulting or had been at startups before getting to business school. And this was a normal activity for them. So they would say, oh, I really want to learn more about X industry. And they'd shoot off their messages and they would set up their coffee chats. And I was a fish out of water. I was like, I don't understand what you all are doing, how you know how to do it. Talking to strangers is really scary. And I had a really generous mentor, my career counselor, Jen Savoy, who specializes in business school students moving into social impact. And she so kindly took me under her wing and walked me through step by step how to actually do this weird thing of finding people you want to learn from and having conversations with them. And she made sure that I felt comfortable in what I didn't know. And I was able to just rip the Band-Aid off and understand how much you can learn when you just connect with people and just have a genuine conversation. And that sparked my thinking about how difficult this process is and how intimidating it is and how much guidance young people will need to really understand it.
It sounds like you were really lucky to find a mentor like Jen. Why do you think schools struggle to actively teach networking, especially if it's such an important skill for career development?
Schools are such magical places because they cultivate connection just by default of being in the same place as a lot of the same people day after day. And so you don't so much network around a school as you see the same students and teachers every day and you build a relationship with them and they get to know your classroom and your skills. I guess I was networking, but I didn't have to make the leap of reaching out to someone new or asking for a connection. Those conversations happened really organically. And one observation that I had is that because teachers and principals often don't do a lot of networking in their own career pathways, they are then responsible for teaching the sort of way of the world to today's young people in networking and might not have the personal experience to do that. And then I think even professionals who know that they should be networking often don't, or are afraid to, or maybe have some bad habits in networking and don't really know how to change them. We don't have a lot of advice on the minutia of networking. There's just a lot of advice to go out and go to job fairs and go to networking events. And I think young people need really explicit instruction about how to connect not just with others professionally, but specifically hiring managers who are often going to be of an older generation and have a specific set of expectations for those interactions.
So, Rebecca, I want to get a little bit into your personal journey. You went to Andover and Duke and Wharton, which is just an extraordinary educational path. When you look back, were there people who helped you understand how opportunity works?
Yeah, I've had an incredibly fortunate set of educational experiences. And the most important traits that set me up to obtain and be successful in those experiences, I really learned from my parents. My parents really taught me to have an entrepreneurial spirit, and that if you want something to be true in this world, you have to make it happen. And the first time that I learned that lesson, I was a young kid and I had just joined a competitive jump roping team. And I had been born in North Carolina. I was on this incredible team. And my family decided to relocate to the Massachusetts area for my dad's job. And there was remarkably no jump rope team. And I was devastated because I had really built a community there and I found something I was really good at and loved. And my parents' response to that was, sounds like we need to start a jump rope team. And so my parents and I founded a jump rope team in Massachusetts. We competed all over the country for several years with other young people in our town. And my mom managed all the logistics. My dad did the training and I built out the routines and taught the other kids. And I was able to really see firsthand that if there is a gap somewhere, you have not only the ability, but the permission to fill that gap and to go after the thing that you want. And I think that is such a remarkable lesson that you don't have to sort of stay within the lines of what's available, but that you can create new things. And I thought of that experience a lot, that I saw something that just needed to exist and happen. And I had this audacity to be able to bring that to life. And so much of that inspires my work today because not all parents have the ability to make space to teach that type of thing to their children, depending on the challenges that they're grappling with. And I think about the importance of teaching durable skills explicitly and creating work-based opportunities for young people so that regardless of their families or their schools, they can have these experiences that can help shape their futures and their careers.
What an important lesson for parents and mentors. If you see that spark in someone young and you can show them what it feels like to take an impossible gap and turn it into an opportunity, that's an experience that can change a life. For you, it was competitive jump roping. And for me, it was building haunted houses. And it reminds me of another guest we had on the show, Todd Sasserdati. For him, it was badminton, which just goes to show that the spark can come from just about anywhere.
We learn a lot with our quirky habits as kids that can become all kinds of things as adults.
So true. How do you think your educational experience added to that entrepreneurial spirit in ways that might not be provided in all educational settings?
Yeah, I think I've been in spaces where I've had a lot of permission to take big swings. And then I was repeatedly in environments that said, you belong here, you have permission to be here, and you have permission to lead here. And I really sought after student leadership and had a lot of at-bats at a young age with starting organizations or raising money or advocating for policies that I believed in. And I was able to practice that in this safe space of my school environment such that I had both the skills and the confidence to do that later in my professional life, and recognize that so many young people don't have that space to exercise those muscles. And then the professional world is even that much more intimidating when they get there as an adult.
So after university, you go into Teach for America and a classroom. What did that experience teach you about talent, access, and opportunity?
I highly recommend teaching for anyone at the start of their career because there is no better way to really understand people and also influence when you are trying to get 30 teenagers to do something they don't want to do. And it's an incredibly humbling experience. There's just nothing like walking into a classroom of kids who are skeptical of you, who can smell that you have never done this thing before. And I'm so grateful for that experience because I learned all of my most important life and leadership lessons in being in the classroom. And I also saw up close the deep inequity in our systems, in our education, and in the opportunities that young people, both in and outside of the classroom, and the ripple effects that can have in their lives and careers. I started out as a teacher. I was here in New York City, and then I founded a high school in Camden, New Jersey. And at the time that we opened the school, Camden was the poorest city in the country and had the highest rate of violent crime. And our students were experiencing so many layers of challenges. Poverty is really the intersection of all of our social failures coming down on children. And it was shocking to see that come to life. And again, the challenges that were presented to our students, but also the extraordinary potential and resilience that young people show when they are given opportunity and really high expectations about what they can achieve.
Can you tell me about a student who had enormous potential, but limited access to the right relationships or the right experiences?
So a student comes to mind who started with us in the 9th grade. He had been in the foster care system and had been shuffling around different families and just had a lot of instability in his personal life. And he was really struggling in the school system. He was not enjoying class. He was acting out outside of class and struggling to find his way socially. And one thing that I saw was that his sophomore year, he was adopted by a family member and suddenly had a lot of stability at home. He was still facing various challenges related to socioeconomic barriers in the city, was still severely behind grade level in reading and math. But I saw how that bit of stability in his life allowed him to really focus and be present because he felt secure in our school environment. And I kid you not, graduated at the top of his class. Same kid, same school environment, same city, but a little stability and belief in what he could accomplish. And that was a real trend that we saw in the school, that students needed one person to really have their back. And there could be a lot of challenging factors outside of that person. But if there was someone really looking out for them, they were able to find a lot of the resources that they need and start to create that virtuous cycle of being successful and feeling successful that really keeps people engaged in school.
Oh, that's beautiful. So just being explicit about making sure that you identify who can help this child in their journey, and having that mentor, that support just is incredibly impactful in life.
Absolutely.
You became the founding principal of Freedom Prep High School in Camden. What problem were you trying to solve, and what did those early days actually feel like?
Yeah, at the time, thought that I had been tapped for this experience because I had been a teacher leader in my community in my school. But I found out later that I think actually quite a few people had been asked to take on the opportunity. And I was the only one naive enough.
Yeah.
The only one naive enough to say yes. And that was another really important entrepreneurial lesson for me, that sometimes it is best to not know how challenging something is going to be, and that often the best opportunities come from perhaps unfounded faith and confidence that you can figure something out. And I just had a mindset that no matter what the challenge was that came our way, that if I just worked harder, I could figure it out. And that's not exactly the mindset that I like to have in my work now. I like to think about more strategic work and being really intentional with my time and resources. But at 25, all I had was the effort that I could bring. And one of the most important lessons that I learned in that time too was really about how to build and lead a team. I was not experienced. My school was incredibly under-resourced, so I was not able to attract top talent through an amazing compensation package. At times, our school environment was not especially safe because the broader city was not safe. So I couldn't offer my staff any of these traditional things, but what I could do was really invest in their development and the culture of our staff and our school, and bring inspiration of what we could build and do together, and then care for each individual person. And that sort of combined with some of the fundamentals that I had learned as a teacher allowed me to create a really thriving, joyful, safe, and rigorous college prep school in a city that did not have a lot of options.
It's an important lesson to sometimes design a program around the soft benefits. There's never enough money, but But if you can identify what motivates people at their core and invest there, sometimes there are great ways to find talented people to help you out.
Absolutely. And so much of the technical skills that someone needs in a job are very teachable, but I hired for the soft skills. I hired for coachability, for alignment with our mission, a willingness to work really hard. And I bring that philosophy to my work now in teaching young people how important it is to have and then to show those durable skills when they're meeting professionals. And most people know that you can learn technical skills. And in this age, the technical skills you need for a job are changing constantly. What's most valuable in our market are the durable skills that persist across roles and functions. And so as educators, I think we're really responsible for teaching those skills as well.
I love that. Who helped you survive or grow during that period?
My manager, Ron Brady, took the greatest chance on me when he first met me.
Because you were 25 at the time, right?
I was 25. I'd been a classroom teacher for 3 years. I had been pretty successful in the classroom and had some leadership roles in my school, but I in no way had the necessary competencies or experience to found and grow a school. And Ron saw something in me and took a chance on me and provided exceptional professional coaching to lead in that role, while also giving me the space to do it my way. And I learned so many important lessons from him. One that comes to mind is that I had a group of teachers that wanted to lead an initiative in the school and that they would spend time and energy and sort of get wrapped up in it. And I could see from a distance that this was probably not going to work. And so I went to him and said, can you help me practice a difficult conversation to say no? And he pushed me and he said, what's the value in that? They're young. They have an idea they're really passionate about. Unless something really bad is going to happen from them trying it, why not foster that sense of inspiration and excitement in them? And then if it doesn't work out, you can support them on the back end and they'll see you as a really supportive and thoughtful leader, but you don't need to shut them down and kill their dreams right now. And I thought that was such a valuable lesson in my own leadership, to nurture people and their ideas, regardless of my own opinions, unless something crazy is going to happen. But I also can imagine all of the times he did that with me. All of the times I went to him, he was more advanced in his career. And I could just imagine him thinking, okay, I'm going to support her in her journey and she will find the outcome when she gets there. I'm so grateful that he gave me that support and confidence to do things my way and was always a safe space for the really, really hard moments and was able to support me as a person as I was really growing up myself alongside building the school.
Oh, that's beautiful. The fact that you could be vulnerable and go to him and say, like, could I practice this difficult conversation with you, and him steering you in the right direction. If you can give people comfort in doing that and get them to come back over and over, that's the sign of a great relationship and great growth opportunity.
Absolutely. You can't just assume that a 25-year-old knows how to have a difficult conversation. They probably don't. And if you can teach them how to do it really well, that can have a ripple effect across your organization, across your career. But you have to take time to really invest in your leaders and your teachers so that they can replicate those leader moves that you want to see.
Of course. So at Multiverse, you moved from school leadership into apprenticeships and workforce learnings. What did that experience teach you about how people actually build careers?
Well, first, I got that opportunity because of networking. I had interned over the summer at an incredible organization based out of Tulsa doing economic development work, and saw that my manager there was connected to Sophie Reddick, who was the leader of the US launch for Multiverse. And I asked him for an introduction. He reached out to her. She didn't write back right away. And this was my dream job. So I said, Mike, I'm going to need you to follow up with her. But I was really persistent. I got the conversation and really connected with Sophie right away about the needs that she had in bringing the apprenticeship program to the US. And my analogy that it sounded like they needed a principal of the apprenticeship program. So again, affirming the importance of interpersonal connection and career moves and seeing that come to life through my connection to Sophie. And then I think the experience of leading at Multiverse and building and running apprenticeship programs affirmed this importance of durable skills. So our apprentices not only had to be exceptional learners, but they also had to be exceptional employees. And they had to do something every day that they weren't familiar with in an environment where everyone else was familiar with it. And I just admired their bravery so much. And it's still something that I think about, that if our apprentices could show up to Google or McKinsey or Amex and say, hi, I'm here to be a software engineer, and I don't yet know how to do that, but I'm here to try. That's something that I can carry with me in my career. And again, I saw the apprentices who were most successful were those who had the durable skills to ask for feedback, to implement feedback, to build the relationships they needed to persist in their roles and to find mentors and support that they could really wrap around themselves through challenging times. And conversely, the individuals who struggled most didn't necessarily have familiarity with those skills and didn't know how to find mentorship or support, and therefore faced additional challenges in those early roles.
That's fascinating to think about. What did apprenticeships reveal that traditional education just misses?
So much comes to life for learners when they have their first work experience, because you get to learn about the job that you're doing and you get to learn about your manager, but you also get to learn about all the people doing lots of different functions around you. And you have literal water cooler conversations and get to hear about different careers and see different pathways in an organization and see who's successful and different models of how you can get ahead in the workplace. And there is so much nuance that you gather from having hands-on experience compared to just reading about a career. And an apprenticeship is a fantastic way to do that.
Yeah. I mean, from an employer perspective or a company perspective, there's a real cost in terms of taking on an apprenticeship. By the time you get them onboarded and set up, they're kind of gone. How do you pitch the value to a company to foster more apprentice opportunities?
Yeah, so there's lots of research out there that the ROI of apprenticeship is very positive for employers because 94% of apprentices will stay within their company and they will be retained at higher rates. There's often a sort of feeling of loyalty to the company that takes a chance on you and supports you in your early development. Employers also have the chance to teach someone, quote unquote, their way of doing things. So you're not hiring someone with maybe bad habits. You're hiring someone that you get to train technically. And there are a number of public sector supports for apprenticeship as well to offset some of the training costs that employers incur.
Yeah.
That said, apprenticeships are far more expensive for employers at the beginning. There's all of this risk of, will this person work out? Will the investment in their education pay off in the long run? And that's really why apprenticeships have been so challenging to scale across the US.
Yeah, there's also the hidden value of the network effect. That individual goes and spends a summer on an apprenticeship and their friends kind of are familiar with that company because their peer has spent time there. And so you're sort of building your brand as a company for that next generation of talent.
Absolutely. And so many employers who do engage with apprenticeship are thinking ahead in that sense, because I think we can all agree as a society that there should be multiple ways to move into work and that it is universal positive when more people are employed and getting skills and on their way to sustaining careers and wages. That sort of shifts with the patterns in hiring and dialogue around workforce development. But at the time when we launched in the US in 2021, there was sort of peak positive sentiment around that impact. And a lot of employers saw the payoff in thinking differently about investing in talent early on.
Just a quick break to hear a word from our sponsor, Connect the Dots. It used to be that your product was what differentiated you from competitors. Now it's also how well you can unlock the power of your network. Connect the Dots uses relationship AI to map out your network, get instant insights, and see exactly who knows the decision makers you've been trying to reach. I've tried it, and it's wild how many warm connections I discovered. No more blind prospecting, just starting conversations with people who already trust you. Visit ctd.ai to learn more and set up a free strategy session.
At Multiverse, you move from school leadership into apprenticeships and workforce learnings. What did that experience teach you about how people actually build careers?
I, as both a principal and apprenticeship leader, saw the tremendous value of work-based learning, of young people getting to experiment with different careers and learn through actual work. And I saw how that experience can be absolutely life-changing for a young person and their career. And I also saw the tremendous barriers to scaling the models the way that we do now. So in our country right now, we create work-based learning by an individual school or intermediary or nonprofit recruiting employers and saying, you should work with our students. They're really great. It will be good for your business in the long run. And then finding and training students and then pairing them up individually. And if you think about the millions of young people who need early work experience, that model is never going to reach all of them. So that reality was sort of simmering in the background for me, that this type of experience is so powerful, but there just aren't enough to go around. And then I started doing more research with college and career counselors and just asking people in my own life, how did you get your first work experience? How did you get your foot in the door? And not a single person said to me, there was an internship board, or I sent my resume in cold on this job board. There was this marketplace and I applied for it sort of randomly. No, everyone told me I knew someone, or I went door to door to small businesses in my community, or I started something entrepreneurial myself. Everything was through people's own initiation. And school counselors would tell me the kids who are most successful are those who will put themselves out there and hustle and go find people that can build the right connections for them and then advocate for themselves. Say, I am 16. Here's some things that I could do to help you out. Would you be willing to let me volunteer for you or let me work for you over the summer? And what those counselors would always tell me is that's the ideal. And that works for lots of students, but not all students know how to do that. And we can't teach all students how to do that motion. And I started to think, okay, but what if we could teach all students that sort of motion of self-advocacy and connection? Could we create more opportunities than we have today? Because are there business owners out there who aren't necessarily proactively thinking, I should have an intern this summer, but if approached by a really smart, curious, passionate young person would say, sure, I'll take a chance on you. And the reason I believe in that model is that's literally how we all have gotten our foot in the door. And that's how most people had their first experience. They weren't qualified. They didn't have the necessary skills, but they had FaceTime with someone to say, here's what I think I could bring. And I promise I'll work really, really hard. And I think that there is tremendous power in young people to open those doors for themselves if and when they're given the skills to do that.
Yeah, that's what you want to see as an employer, someone who takes the initiative. If it's just someone who passed along their resume because the apprenticeship or the job opportunity was available, it's not nearly as impactful as if somebody approaches you and says, this is why I want to work with you, and this is what I have to offer. It's just much more conviction there.
Absolutely. Self-advocacy is a demonstration of your durable skills. You're showing your communication, your self-awareness, your self-advocacy, your ability to put yourself out there and work hard. And you're proving that in the way that you connect with someone. Maybe you send a timely follow-up email, you ask a couple questions, like you're proving to them what you're able to do. And there's all this innovation right now about how do you badge durable skills. And I just think you could just have them have a conversation. And it shows so much of that in a way that is already how employers are making hiring decisions. So instead of trying to change employer behavior, what if we change learner behavior to better fit into the system?
You're now at Prentice, which teaches students how to initiate their own real world opportunities. Walk me through what a student actually does in this program.
Yeah, so there's a lot of content out there about how to network. And a lot of it is pretty high level. A lot of it says, find some people you know, tap your connections, ask for opportunity, go forth. And the average 17-year-old does not know how to do all of those steps, especially in this generation.
The average adult sometimes struggles with that.
Exactly. And this generation of young people in particular aren't calling on the landline and they aren't knocking on the door of their friend's house before they play for the afternoon because they're playing virtually. And students' social lives have changed dramatically because of the pandemic and social media and technology. Students these days feel very uncomfortable with this concept of asking people for help, asking people for connections to other people, having conversations with strangers, and doing so over the phone, over email, or in person. And my program really breaks down the skills that young people need to be able to have that connection into micro skills. So we don't just say, think about who you know. We say, we're going to guide you through the process of identifying 25 people who you know who might do you a favor. And without fail,
Rebecca,
they say,
thank
I
you
only
for
know
being
2
on
people.
Who Got Me Here.
But
You're
with
doing great
prodding
work.
and support,
It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Members of their community. Thanks so much, Jamie. They know, maybe neighbors, soccer teammates, friends from church, friends from art class, who they can connect with and share a little bit more about themselves and ask for those connections that they can then have conversations with and hopefully open doors to. So we really focus on the small skills because we see that's where the barriers are, and that once students have those skills, they can unlock the opportunities for themselves.
This has always been a hard, soft skill to master, but I'm old enough to remember where we had the house phone, where there's one phone number and you pick up the phone and you talk to the adults. You don't know who's calling on the other side because there's no caller ID. But even that has been kind of taken away in terms of how people network and how they get comfortable speaking to adults. You know, this generation, what are their strengths and what are some of their skills that have been harder to develop?
This generation are very entrepreneurial. And they really value independence and having agency over their lives. And the pandemic happened and they sort of lost control over their school experience. And now they're being told, there aren't going to be any jobs for you and the economy is falling apart. And they are really seeking opportunities to demonstrate and hold on to the agency that they have to influence their lives. And that's fantastic because you can tap into that. You can say, you don't have to wait for your school to offer you an internship. You don't have to wait for someone to offer you a chance to submit your resume. You can create opportunity for yourselves. And so I think that's really in their favor. I think the challenge is exactly what you named, that a lot of young people are hesitant to talk on the phone and connect with strangers, and that this is something that just takes practice. And so we need to break down networking not only into small skills that all young people can learn, but also really address some of the emotional hurdles that they face when thinking about this process. So help-seeking avoidance, fear of failure, fear of not saying the right thing. This one always breaks my heart. Someone looking back to them and saying, oh, your ambition is too high. Why do you think that you could do X, Y, and Z? And so we do a lot of really intentional exercises and community work to help students understand that they do have permission to have these conversations. And actually that most adults are thrilled to talk to them. I have so many quotes from our experts who say, this was the highlight of my day. I'm on boring work calls all day. And I got to talk to a 16-year-old who had researched me and prepared and was asking for advice, and I got to talk about myself. And so when students get some of that good feedback, they feel a lot more confident. But at first, they just don't believe that someone will really want to receive their call.
So you coach them, you take them through what they might be fearing or what might be holding them back, and you do some role playing to sort of develop that muscle. What happens when someone doesn't respond?
Yeah. I didn't prepare them enough in my first cohorts for that. I just taught them about sending out their outreach, and then they would come back to class. They'd be devastated. They'd say, nobody wrote back to me. I was like, oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you that will happen at first. You have to send them some reminders. And so when I say we're in the minutia, I mean like, okay, 4 days after you message someone, you have to send them a follow-up note. And don't worry, it's not about you. They're probably busy. Here's how to follow up without nagging them or bothering them. So you have to really take them through that experience. I find I share a lot of personal experiences. I say, I get nervous before having certain conversations. So I think it's important for them to see and hear from adults too, that this is scary. And it's also a necessary part of being a grown-up.
Yeah, you just have to show that you can be vulnerable as well. You've had these experiences that sometimes haven't gone right or that have been nerve-wracking. What does a win look like? Is it a conversation? Is it job shadowing, an internship, a mentor, confidence?
In my early pilots, my goal was that the students had conversations that were informational interviews. So they were learning about careers. They were getting some really localized advice. A lot of the digital tools these days tell students broadly how to break into a career pathway, not this is how you do that in your specific town or city. And so I just wanted to see, can I teach kids to have these conversations that at first they tell me they are not interested in having? And what I saw was that the adults that the students were speaking with kept offering additional support. We find that 70% of the adults that our students speak with offer a job shadowing experience, a job referral, whether within their own organization or to another organization. In their
Very high percentage.
Far exceeded my own expectations. But I think this goes back to the fact that people like helping kids. People see themselves in the young person who's talking to them. As long as that kiddo is prepared and thoughtful and trying really hard, most people say, I can remember what that feels like. And so that has really blown me away. And I think that's such an exciting realization that there's so many community members who want to support young people, but just haven't been asked. And so I think this is a real opportunity to think, how can we leverage that fact to help young people start their careers in a meaningful way?
What are the most common mistakes adults make when trying to teach networking?
I think overlooking the fears that young people have can be pretty damaging, because that sort of affirms to young people, you're missing this skill, like you've missed the mark on something, where actually we really need to build their confidence. And so we need to help them understand that this is scary and also that they can do it. I think the second mistake that folks make sometimes is going right to cold calling and overlooking the tremendous power of the network and community that a young person may already have. Young people really underestimate the connections and the helpfulness of those connections. I had a young person the other day. He was a high school junior. He wants to break into healthcare. He's like, I don't know anyone in healthcare. I don't know how I'm going to break into this field. There's so many different role titles. There's so many different hospital systems. I don't even know where I would begin. And so he did the network mapping exercise, and we go through, how do you reach out to different people? You might send a family member a text message, but you might send a formal email to a teacher. So he does all of the work. He sends out his outreach, and he came running into our next session. He goes, Miss, I have 3 aunties in healthcare. This child has 3 family members in the field he wants to go into. I had no idea. And that happens at least once with every cohort that I teach, where they have literal family members who they know and see regularly who are in the fields they're interested in, but they aren't necessarily talking about careers with them. And so I'd say don't underestimate the power of the people that you know. You might not have a parent who is a lawyer, but your sibling's partner's cousin might be a lawyer. You might be able to get to that connection through a series of other connections. And I'd say the last piece of advice I'd have for adults who are supporting young people in this journey is to make sure that they understand the funnel, that they have to send out a lot more outreach than they're going to have, and actually give them some concrete numbers and goals to get there so that they're not discouraged when they don't hear back from everyone.
Rebecca, I love what you're doing. Your mission is an important one for the next generation. So how can people help?
I'm excited to talk to organizational leaders, school leaders, but also parents and young people who are really thinking about this problem of work-based learning accessibility and the tremendous power that our young people have to unlock that. So you can find my website online. It's prentice.net. You can find us on LinkedIn, and please reach out and let me know how you're thinking about this challenge. And I always love hearing success stories of young people reaching out and creating their own opportunity. And I would love to see how our program could support your community as well.
Before we close out, I want to do a quick lightning round. So Rebecca, who is one person who got you here and what did they do for you?
My first manager, Lisa Frisha, taught me how to be a teacher when I was a little baby Teach for America teacher and had no idea what I was doing. And she hired me as
You got to fake it until you make it.
lots of that.
What is one relationship building lesson you had to learn the hard way?
That you miss all of the shots you don't take. There are people that are doing incredible work who will connect with you if you reach out, but they're just definitely not going to randomly find you and reach out to you. So you've got to take your shot.
What advice would you give to a student who says, I don't know anybody important?
Start with the people who you do know. Ask them for connections that are relevant and helpful for you. And also do some cold outreach the old school way. Pick up the phone, send some emails, go door to door, and see who will have that first conversation with you. You never know who will say yes and the other introductions that they can make for you once you've connected with them.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Love this question. I would say to be less afraid that early in your career, you have time and space and permission to take some risks. And those risks probably seem much bigger to you than they are to everyone else. And so don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
Rebecca, thank you for being on Who Got Me Here. You're doing great work. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks so much, Jamie.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. We really appreciate your time today. For more stories like this one, visit whogotmehere.com. On the website, you'll find our networking masterclass, bite-sized lessons, and a spot to nominate guests that you think we should have on the show. If this content inspires you, we would greatly appreciate it if you left a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. Who Got Me Here is a production of Jamie Grenny, and Now It's Here. I'm your host, Jamie Grenny, and our producer is Alexis Ramdow. Thanks for being here today, and we'll see you soon.